Welcome back to the class on international business communication. We were discussing relational communication in the last class. Today we will again continue with the same thing. I'm doing this on the same day. So anyway, so let's get into relational communication. I will not revise anything. There's lots to cover, so we'll just get into it and then we will start with the revisions. Okay, we were talking about different theories. Some of the other theories that that are very relevant to the concept of relational communication, or some theories that explain how and why relationships develop the way they do and how we communicate in relationships, are as follows. Yet another theory is relational or interactional theory. We discussed the Firo theory. We discussed the social exchange theory, we discussed pragmatism, and the next one in the line is relational or interactional theory. This theory was proposed by Watzlawick, Bean and Jackson in 1967. It's been covered in a book by Ross and Anderson, published in the year 2000. According to this theory, we have 5 axioms or 5 things that we believe to be true. The first axiom is that we cannot not communicate. It is impossible to not respond when a person we are communicating with, when a person we are interacting with, when a person we are in front of, when a person we are facing sends a message. So that is the first axiom here. That is the first thing we believe to be true irrespective of whatever we do. The second axiom here is that the content and relationship levels of communication determine the manner in which our communication progresses. Our talk reveals not only what we think about our topics, but our relationship to each other. So this sort of feeds into itself. What we say to each other depends on the perceived relationship between the interactants. At the same time, what we say to each other determines how the relationship progresses. If you think back, we were talking about communication rules, and this is one more thing that influences the definition of communication rules. What we perceive about ourselves, where are we in terms of hierarchy? Are we peers? What kind of relationship do we have? Where are we in the stages, different stages of relationship that we discussed? And if you remember, there was a slide that said that all these different stages exist and are defined by virtue of their placement within the context. They are influenced by the context, they are influenced by the perceptions we have about each other, about the relationship, about the manner in which relationship is evolving, and they are manifested in and through the rules of communication, and that is what this axiom deals with. The third axiom is that our communication is filled with attempts to punctuate sequences of events. That is, to identify openings, closings, starts, stops, causes and effects. Again, communication rules. Back to communication rules. We are trying to find or trying to subconsciously trying to come up with or identify stages in our communication. Where do we pause? What is the beginning of the interaction? What is the ending of the interaction? What are the causes for the next stage of the interaction? What will whatever somebody is saying to me lead to? So we punctuate our communication event with these different stages, these sequences of events. They may not always, most of the times actually, the boundaries are blurred. Most of the times the boundaries do not, these stages overlap, one thing sort of just blends into another. It's very hard to segregate these things. But as human beings trying to make sense of all this chaos going on, we try and find the startings and endings. The fourth axiom is that messages can be digital, which are based on arbitrary agreements such as are found in language. So they are very clearly defined, or analogic, which are based on more immediate nonverbal relationships. Complicated, simple interpretation, at least at your level, is, I am assuming that the people who are listening to this class are undergraduates. This series of lectures, even though seems very advanced, is actually directed towards the undergraduate students of business. So, going back to axiom number 4, the messages can be digital, which means they are based on arbitrary agreements. They are based on things that we believe to be true, which we express through language. And they are analogic, which is more expressed through non-verbal communication. We complement our words, we complement whatever we say, we complement whatever we write on paper by way of through the non-verbal relationships, through the non-verbal communication that we share in these relationships, and messages can be either or both of these. That is the fourth thing we believe to be true. It's not either digital, it's not only analogic, it's usually a combination of these. The fifth axiom here is that interaction is usually can be symmetrical or complementary. We talked about the varying levels of interaction. When I am talking to somebody who is at par with me in the hierarchy, the relationship is symmetrical. I meet a colleague and I say, how are you? Person says, I'm fine. How are your children? Fine. How are your children? Same. Have you finished your work? Yeah. Have you finished grading? Yes. Have you finished grading? Yes. So it's a symmetrical sort of interaction. I meet my boss and the boss looks at me and says, here is the boss. Aradhana, have you finished grading? This seems more like an order. Why? Because he's in a position to ask me about my grades. And I say, yes sir, and I come up to the same level. No sir, I still have about 50 papers to correct. So I'm still not able to answer you back on the same level. That is a complementary type of interaction. I am responding to what you asked me. I am sort of feeding back into it. Symmetrical is I'm at the same level with you. So some aspects in this are schismogenesis, which is two complementary positions grow progressively farther apart each as a result of each other. This is something similar to the avoidance stage we discussed in relationship building. Because of the strains posed on each other, the stagnation stage, strains that are posed on each other, the partners tend to grow apart only because of this strain. There is a challenge. We can't communicate with each other, we can't grow with each other, so let's grow far apart. Confirmation is another aspect of the fifth axiom. This is the capacity to be noticed and perceived in both actuality and potentiality. We all want to be acknowledged, we all want to be accepted, and this is the capacity, our willingness and our ability to be noticed and perceived in both actuality. This is what I am actually doing, this is what I have the potential to be doing. And these axioms in turn determine how we sort of build our relationships. The last aspect of the fifth axiom is disconfirmation. One partner, either we acknowledge each other's existence and potential, or we communicate as if the other partner doesn't exist. I am avoiding you, I am completely negating your presence, I am looking through you, I am completely sidelining you. So these things, these concepts can have a tendency to, these concepts can have an impact on the manner in which relationships develop and grow. We have to rush through this, there is lots to cover, so I am going to really breeze through this. Please take these words and read more about them. Okay. Next theory is interpersonal perception theory. Now, according to this theory, only when people can match, I am sorry, there is an extra H in match, it is not match, it is match, or coordinate their perceptions of each other, of the relationship, of the other's view of the relationship and so forth, can there be a genuine relationship. According to this theory, we cannot have a genuine relationship till we are able to bring our perceptions of each other on the same level. I am who I am, I know who I am. I also have an idea of who you are in relation to me. You are a friendly colleague. That is my perception. I feel that we are on the same level. That is my perception of you. You are a nice person, you don't manipulate people. That is my perception of you. And the third perception is that we are friends. I am a good person, you are a good person, and because we are both good, honest, sincere people, we are friends. You look at me and say, what does she think of herself? She is arrogant, she is obnoxious. So that is where the disconnect starts happening. There's no coherence. I feel that you think I'm a nice person and that is why you talk nicely to me. You, on the other hand, are talking nicely to me because you don't seem to have an option. If I talk badly to her, if I'm disrespectful to her, my own, the manner in which people perceive me will be negatively affected. So that is where the disconnect starts. I am a manipulative person. I'm insecure about my position. That is what probably you're thinking. I'm insecure in my position. Maybe if she's very honest and sincere, maybe I will also be expected to work just as hard. Or she thinks that she's honest and sincere, but these are the problems I have seen in her behavior. These things are not coherent. So I am honest and sincere, but she is not. That is where the incoherence starts. On the other hand, if I say we are both honest and sincere and hardworking, we are both humans, but we put in a decent amount of work, and we are both honest and we are on the same level. You, on the other hand, also, you have the same perception about me, about our friendship, about the reason why we are friends, and about yourself and your role in the friendship. That is what interpersonal perception theory is all about. It says only when there is complete coherence can we have a genuine relationship, otherwise there is some sort of deception going on. Meta perspectives are perspectives about perspectives. This is what I was just talking about. How I see someone, how they see me seeing them, and how that defines our relationship with them and how they see themselves. Okay? Role is a set of behaviors expected of a certain person or position, and that in turn determines the perception we have of ourselves and the perception we have of the other people in our environment. So and so is expected to put in 8 hours of work in the day. So and so is supposed to be seen in the office from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. But I don't see this person coming to the office, and when I knock on this person's office, the office is always locked. So it is about what people see. It is not acceptable. Even though you may be sitting in the office and you've locked your office and you're doing something, the expectation is not met, and that in turn starts affecting the meta perspectives and the perceptions, and that can lead to a change in the relationship. The next theory here is rules theory. Rules theory is, as per this theory, what we say that the rules can help predict the evolution of relationships if they are followable, which means we can follow them, we can understand them, and we can access them, and we can follow them. If they are prescriptive, if there is an if-then relationship between the causal events, between the events in the relationship, in the communication. If I say good morning to my boss, the boss will smile back at me. If I don't say good morning to my boss will not smile at me. So if I am nice to the boss will always be nice to me. If I am polite to my peers, they will be polite to me. If I do not do this, then something else will happen. That is a prescriptive kind of thing, contextual. We've discussed this ad nauseum, so I'm not going to go into it. The rules are defined, determined within the context, and by virtue of the context the interaction is taking place in, and rules are behaviorally based. Again, there's a debate regarding the predictive nature of rules. Can we predict people's behavior? Rules are manifested, communication rules are manifested in and through behavior. Behavior is an overarching, it's a superset of communication. Communication is a part of behavior, but communication also determines how we behave. And whether these things are predictive in nature is still a topic of debate among the theorists. Okay. Next one here is coordinated management of meaning, the CMM theory. This theory was proposed by Peirce and Cronin in 1980, and it's again brought out very nicely in the book by Ross and Anderson. According to this theory assumes that people don't need the same basic understanding about their situation in order to coordinate their behavior through rules. So we accept that people are different and people have different perceptions, and despite these different perceptions, they will follow the same rules. That is the first assumption. The second assumption is that we live in a heterogeneous social order. This is related to this. Now, this theory analyzes communication episodes by looking for coherence, which is what we just discussed. What is inside is also on the outside. What I feel is how I behave. What I think about the other person is what I do, or how I behave with the other person. Control of the interactants over the situation. Where does my nose end and yours begins? How much control do I have over the situation? What can I do to ensure that this situation is most comfortable for me? That is control. The third point here is balance. Balance is the extent to which the interactants like or dislike what happens. And keeping these three things in mind, according to this theory, the communication episodes are analyzed, and then these communication episodes are taken into account, and they help determine the evolution of the relationship between the two interactants. Okay. This theory also identifies a hierarchy of context extending from intrapersonal content through speech acts, what I want, whatever I've said to turn into what speech act is, what I say has some effect and gives me some result, it initiates some action, through contracts, which is a commitment, and episodes, the actual episode in which the communication event occurs, and life scripts. How does this communication event, how do the rules played out in this communication event, how do our relationships affect what I think of my life? We had discussed all of this in the pragmatic rules, when we talked about pragmatic rules. Now, some of you may say, why were we not told of this earlier? This would have helped us understand communication rules or pragmatic rules much better. Problem is that if I had shared all these theories with you earlier, a lot of whatever we have discussed earlier would not have been so clear. So, we need to keep going back and forth. Anyway, okay. The rules that govern coordinated management of meaning. The first rules are constitutive rules. Constitutive rules organize act as hierarchies of meaning. For example, if someone calling a beautiful girl as beautiful, somebody calls a beautiful girl as beautiful, will lead to the girl feeling good about herself, especially if she's taken extra care to look good that day. Depending on who this person is and what the perception in the girl's mind is about this person, the act of calling this girl beautiful could result in appreciation of the comment or compliment, or it could also result in a perception of the compliment coming across as an insult or somebody trying to hit on her. So, it could be taken as vulgar depending on what the girl thinks, where the girl thinks she is. Again, this is contextual. All right. Rules can also be regulative. They lead to the regulation of the perceived meaning of what is said depending on the situation. And this is something that we have been told to do. I will not let somebody affect me negatively. This is what we keep telling ourselves when we go for counseling, we are going through a negative experience. What are we told? We are told, okay, ignore it. You don't have to feel bad. Somebody is calling you nasty, somebody is calling you bad, somebody is saying you're fat, somebody is saying you're ugly. It doesn't mean that you are ugly. Ignore the comment. Ignore the speech act, the intention of the speech act. Do not let whatever has been said result in an action that is desirable by the speaker. So, that is regulative. I, as the receiver of the message, have the power to regulate the consequences. This is what we've been stressing on right from the beginning. The meaning, the ultimate, the final meaning that comes out of any communication situation has to be coordinated between the intention of the receiver, the intention of the sender and the intention of the receiver, and the perceptions they have about each other. Now, if I decide that the meaning of whatever has been said is different from the meaning that was initially intended, then even a negative meaning, the intensity of the meaning comes down considerably, especially if my interpretation, deliberate interpretation, is completely opposite of the intended meaning. And this actually has a very high relevance in our work situations. It is relevant for motivation, it is relevant in so many different concepts, and I'll let you figure that out for yourselves. I've given you an example, hopefully it's enough food for thought. Okay. Another theory is ethnomethodology. Now this is based on a common sense approach to communication and behavior. It studies how people in everyday life, without realizing that they are doing anything remarkable, make practical sense of their complex social experiences and translate that common sense into behaviors. So this is, let's read this again. It studies how people in everyday life, without realizing they are doing anything remarkable, make practical sense of their complex social experiences and translate that common sense into behaviors. I was telling you that many of these theories are given to us informally by the elders in our families and by the elders at work, and this is what it is. According to this theory, this theory just goes into a situation, finds out what is going on normally, and then comes up with postulates. Ethnomethodology also, according to ethnomethodology, also we find out only by interfering with normal rules and assumptions do we expose those rules for study. We don't realize that these rules exist. We are doing them subconsciously. This is what the elders in our families are doing. This is what people who haven't had any training in communication are doing. They are just going by the feedback and their own levels of comfort, and that is what I keep stressing upon. The operational word here is comfort levels. So people who have no knowledge of rules of communication, who have no knowledge of communication theory, also end up being very good communicators. And how is that? They haven't been to school, they haven't been to college, they haven't taken classes in theories of communication. How do they know it? They know it because they have been subconsciously following these rules without even knowing that these rules existed. It's only when some of these rules are not followed, or somebody goes against these rules, or somebody goes against these assumptions, do they realize that something is not right, and that's when they start looking into it if they want to fix the interaction. Okay. The other postulate here is no situation is completely covered by rules for communicative interchanges, and this is what I've been stressing on right from the beginning. None of these things is exhaustive. None of these slides can give you everything there is to know about these situations. So I would really urge you to take whatever I have said here as keywords and move on from there. Okay. Another theory that explains management of relationships or evolution of relationships is the dialectical theory. According to the dialectical theory, relationships result from the interplay of perceived opposite forces or contradictions and from how relational partners negotiate these ever-changing processes. We believe that two opposite sides of every interaction exist, and it is only when we negotiate these opposite sides do we come to an understanding, a mutual understanding that is neither too comfortable nor too uncomfortable for each of the partners. So there is a lot of negotiation going on all the time because there's constant evolution of the interplay of these opposing forces. That is the first postulate here. Secondly, we also believe that relationships are not linear. They don't go in a line, but they consist of oscillation between contradictory goals or desires. I'm either completely in favor of you or I'm completely not in favor of you. I would like to give you the best possible training in communication, but I'm worried that all this may be too complicated, or this may not be appropriate for the age and stage that you're at. So I withdraw, and I withdraw too much. So one day I give you hardcore theory, the second day I just give you patches, and then I go again into hardcore theory, and I'm like, no, it's too simple. So, depending on the feedback I get from my students, this is what happens, and with every batch, these things are redefined. Hopefully, we come to an understanding by the end of the semester because we just keep going back and forth. So, these relationships are oscillating. The same thing happens in discipline. Now, I'm giving you how this connects to your office relationships, especially when you're trying to superior subordinate relationships, when you're trying to discipline your juniors or enforce some sort of discipline or enforce deadlines or regulate your environments. We have these dialectical tensions that are created, and let's go into the dialectical tensions here. The first one is connection versus autonomy, where are we symmetrically connected, and where do we have complete autonomy over what we are doing? How dependent am I on my environment, and how independent am I? Interdependence and independence. Okay, that is connection versus autonomy. The second thing here is predictability versus novelty. How predictable is my behavior as a result of the manner in which I communicate? Now, successful executives say that in order to succeed, in order to do well in any situation, please don't be predictable. This is what I heard one colleague saying to the junior batch the other day, or sorry, the graduating batch the other day. And thank you very much. I don't think it's appropriate to mention the name of that colleague, but this is what we believe. I will have an edge over the others. What do you mean edge over the others? I have something new to offer that others don't, and I hide it. Okay, so that is novelty and predictability. If I am not predictable, I come up with something new, people will think that I have an edge over the others. Again, these tensions are created. How predictable do you want to be? You don't want to be completely unpredictable. People would call you crazy. There has to be some level of predictability in any relationship and some level of novelty to keep the relationship going. Okay, the last dialectical tension that we'll talk about today is openness versus privacy, confidentiality versus transparency in an organization. I'm sure you can discuss that. How much do you want to share with the other person to establish common ground, and where do you want to draw the line and say that's enough? I'm not going to go into it any further. Excuse me. So, this is a dialectical tension that we face when opposing goals meet. I mean, I want to be connected with my peer, but I also want to be competing with my peer. Our promotions depend on who does better work, but so and so is a very nice person and I want to have a friend at work, but I could beat this very friend in the race for promotion, and that is where all these things start coming up. Okay, now comes a very important theory, dialogic theory. Now, according to the dialogic theory, a person does not and cannot develop an identity except through communication with other social beings. I am part of a system. I do not have an identity outside of the system, and you will say, why not? Why not? Who says that you don't have an identity? Your uniqueness is recognized only when it is compared to the normalcy of others in the environment. We also believe that identity, language and communication reside in the between. This is Martin Buber's theory. According to Buber, 1965, he said that identity, language and communication are actually in the middle somewhere. Now, if it is you and me and the outside world, and I'll just draw it and show it to you here. So, this is me, this is you, and this is rest of the world. Okay, we interact with each other. Yes, I am independent of you, you are independent of me, and the rest of the world is independent of both of us. And of course, we are part of the rest of the world, we are also connected with the rest of the world. Now, Buber says that the interaction does not happen here or just here, it happens somewhere in this space. Okay. So, identity, my identity here is different from my identity here, me in relation to the rest of the world, me in relation to you. Your identity, self identity here is different. Your identity in relation to the rest of the world is independent of what I think of you and what I am in relation to the rest of the world, even if we are very, very close to each other. So, this is what this is, and of course, identity, the language I use to communicate with you is very different. We'll use different words, we'll have different favorite words. The language I use to communicate with the rest of the world will depend on who I am talking to, where this person exists, and the communication per se, the entire communication event exists over here. It doesn't focus here, it doesn't focus here, it doesn't focus here, it's somewhere over here. So, this is what the dialogic theory states. The key ideas here are philosophical anthropology by Buber, person-centered approach, and hermeneutics. Now, we just have half an hour left, so I am really going to rush through this. Please take the keywords, please read them up. Buber's philosophical anthropology deals with the I-thou attitude. I-thou attitude is the tendency of a person to invite and allow dialogue with another unique individual, which means that I interact with another person who has his or her unique traits. I am still connected, but I deal with another person who has unique traits. I-it attitude assumes that others can be treated as objects, as things that can be concisely described, measured, manipulated, and accounted for. Discuss amongst yourselves what this gives you an example of. In the management, I am taking a pause here, not because I am out of words, I have lots to say, I am just giving you a minute to think. In the real world, what do your managers say? Send 2 human resources, send 4 human resources to this department. So, we are being objectified in the outsourcing industry. Nothing against the outsourcing industry, you have to stay ahead of the game. We are treated like resources, we are objectified. That is the I-it attitude. When somebody is working for you, we assume that they are objects and they need to put in a certain amount of work, and since we are paying them a certain amount of salary, we can get the maximum benefit out of their work. Okay. Now, the I-it attitude rests on genuine dialogue. The spoken or silent, the I-thou, I-it attitudes rest on dialogue, spoken or silent communication, where each of the participants really has in mind the other or others in their present and particular being, and turns to them with the intention of establishing a living mutual relationship between him and them. So, we communicate, we convey through a mutual understanding. I believe you, I have faith in you, I feel that you are a genuine person. We just talked about the genuineness of a relationship just a while ago, and this is what it is. There is spoken communication, there is silent communication, and the intention and the feeling here is I believe what you are saying, I have full faith, and I hope you will have full faith in me as well, and we are working in each other's best interests. Technical dialogue appears to have a give and take quality, but is actually designed only to achieve a specified end through objective communication. I will communicate with you only to the amount that is necessary. I will give you instructions, you follow them, you report to me, and that is the end of it. Okay, there is no mutual feeling involved. And the last one here is monologue. Monologue is a dominant voice divorced from the expectation of a response. I would like you to submit this report. No communication, you submit a report. This is more like an order. Technical communication is what we call a professional communication, where the technical dialogue would be more like what is termed as professional communication these days. We need to be professional in our interactions, we shouldn't say more than is necessary, and genuine dialogue would be more at a friendly level. I feel for you, I empathize with you, you empathize with me, and that is the dialogue. We are really having a dialogue with each other's best interests at heart. Okay. Rogers gives us a person-centered approach. We talked about Martin Buber's theory. Again, this is too short a time to discuss Buber's theory. At this point, I must mention the name of the person who got me involved, who got me started on these theories. This class cannot go on without a mention of those names. Dr. Alton Barber, who taught me everything I know about interpersonal communication, and the person who got me started and who I think knows probably he's the smartest person as far as the theories of communication are concerned, and that is Dr. Roy Wood. He's a philosopher, he's a professor of communication at the University of Denver, and he was one of my first teachers. Very hard taskmaster, but he taught me everything I know about theories of communication. He got me interested in this whole idea of theorizing communication. So he initiated us into this, and we had a series of lectures on Martin Buber's I-thou concept. It cannot be covered in 5 minutes. Whatever I've given you may not seem complete, but then please take these keywords and explore further. Okay, so let's get into dialogic theory. Rogers' person-centered approach. Rogers' person-centered approach says that relationships can be built effectively through free interaction, through effective dialogue, which in turn rests on these three things. We need to have freedom of interaction, we need to have free-flowing interaction, and that can only be achieved through effective dialogue. Now, this free-flowing effective dialogue leads to free interaction, which further leads to an effective relationship. The first point here is that the first factor that affects effective dialogue is congruence, which is matching of the inner experience of the interactants with their outer behavior. What I feel is how I behave in public. Positive regard, acceptance and regard. When communicators do not attach conditions to their acceptance of others, their relationships produce more effective understanding. This is what our elders tell us. Please do not expect anything from your relationship. Don't expect anything from your environments. This is what the Bhagavad Gita teaches us. So, all this is connected. Karm karte chalo, phal ki chinta mat karo. I am sorry to be using Hindi here, but this is pretty much what we are taught from our childhood. You do your work, don't expect, and things will fall into place, and that is positive regard. And relationships are much better if you don't expect anything from the communication. Empathy is to perceive the internal frame of reference of another with accuracy and with the emotional components and meanings which pertain thereto as if one were the person, but without ever losing the as if condition. Empathy means I feel for you, I can put myself in your shoes, I think like you. It is as if the same thing was happening to me. It is not happening to me, but it is as if the same thing was happening to me. Now, according to the person-centered approach, if we are congruent, if we have positive regard, if we don't expect anything, if we feel for the other person, relationships build and grow. Hermeneutics studies how interpretations are developed out of people's encounters with written and oral texts. What we read, what we listen to, in turn shapes how we respond. And again, there are various concepts here. The first concept here is reproductive meaning, which is listeners or summarizers, if you're reading something, recreation of meaning. You reproduce the meaning of the spoken word. And this is your attempt at getting as close to the intended meaning of the sender as possible. The second one here is productive meaning, which is the creation of new meaning, which is what we say the creative thinking out of the box, coming to a common meaning together, a new side of meaning. What I am doing in this class is primarily reproducing meaning. I read texts, I share them with you. I am trying to reproduce the connections that I have read in these texts. Once in a while, I come up with a new insight that I think is new, I hope it is new, but wherever I can find the person I can acknowledge, the creator of that insight who I can acknowledge, I give them due acknowledgement. So, this is reproductive meaning. Productive meaning is what I ask you to do at the end of every lecture. I ask you to apply the theories, whatever I have taught in this class, to real life situations. That is what most of the questions have been centered around. I ask you to read whatever I have taught you, I ask you to go through the lecture, and I ask you to apply whatever I have taught you to real life situations. Now, those are new insights that you will not find in a book. Those are new things that you will come up when you interact with people, when you discuss amongst yourselves. So, that is productive meaning. Linguisticality. Can you please focus on the slide? Thank you. Linguisticality deals with the linguistic immersion, the manner, the focus on the language that shapes our behavior. Linguisticality typically says that communicators, because of their necessary immersion in language and particular historical contexts, are also interdependent with the language itself. We are shaped by language just as we shape language for future generations. And now I am going to talk about this for about a minute. When I was growing up, we used to have a term called handicapped. Negative connotations, but that is the word I grew up with. That is the word that was used 30 years ago, 40 years ago. So I grew up hearing that somebody whose body parts are not functioning normally, and our definition of normal is what we see in our environment, person is restricted. Such a person is restricted in some ways. Then came the term disabled. Now focus here is on the word dis. So we were taught that the person is not able to do whatever the rest are doing. And guess what? The dis started vanishing when more and more reports started coming up. With the increase in communication, with increase in exposure, more and more reports started surfacing of the extraordinary abilities of people who did not seem normal. Helen Keller was one. We have so many examples here. So all these reports, Helen Keller was recognized the world over. So we had so many reports. So what came up after that? Differently abled. We said differently abled, which means I acknowledge that your abilities are different. You are in no way less than me. Now the kids who are learning the diversity in human capacity these days are learning that people are not disabled. They are not unable to do certain things. Their abilities are different from other people we see in the environment. And again, there's a whole group of people who have, and the diversity is so widespread, we are becoming more and more accepting of the different abilities, the differences we see in our environments. So the language has become more inclusive. That in turn is shaping the way we behave in our environments. The mainstreaming of differently abled people in schools and colleges and in the workplace is leading to a more inclusive thinking, less bias in behaviors, and that is how language is shaping our behaviors. I know this is a very sensitive topic, and I am in awe of whatever I see in the environment, and when I see any form of bias, it disturbs me. So I just thought of sharing this example with you. All right, and of course what we say shapes our behavior. However we see things, new terms come up when we are talking about behavior affecting language. We coin new terms on a daily basis, so that is behavior feeding into language, and language is in turn shaping our behavior, intra and interpersonal behavior. Okay. Dramaturgical theory deals with the according to the dramaturgical theory, this is another set of theories. We talked about the dialogic theories, now we will talk about dramaturgical theory. According to this set of theories, public communication is rarely spontaneous. The illusion becomes its own reality, and the boundaries between what is scripted and what is immediate blur. So we believe that the public communication is not really spontaneous, it is scripted, and in interaction, social actors try to coordinate their behaviors convincingly in order to give audiences the impression that reality is present within the boundaries of the interaction. There is some sort of pretense going on. Public communication is rarely spontaneous. When we talk to people in the public sphere, we are not being spontaneous, we are not saying the things we should. We really feel, we are saying the things we should. So that is what this means. The illusion becomes its own reality, and when we get into that mode of saying things we should, that sort of feeds in itself and we start doing things, we become actors. It's not fake, it is just an evolution of the interaction. Okay, role is identity and perception of the self and others. What we see, where we stand in relation to others, what are we contributing to the environment. Okay. Dramaturgical theory, we have various parts of this theory. The first one is new rhetoric versus old rhetoric, as given by Burke in 1967, again discussed in Ross and Anderson. Old rhetoric dealt with the ability to affect others' attitudes and behaviors through deliberate design or persuasive tactics. So, if you compare the advertisements of yesteryears, you need to buy this or else, do this or else. You persuade people to do things. The new rhetoric here is the object of communication is not to change another's attitude, but to set up the conditions under which individuals can find commonality with each other's experience. If you try and force me to do something, I will not establish a relationship. I will not buy things that you are selling. How can you tell me what to buy and what not to buy? How can you tell me how I should be dealing with things in my environment? How can you tell me to be nice to my colleagues? How can you tell me to not scold my students if they don't do right things? But then that was the old rhetoric was, you're a student, teacher scolds you, you're supposed to say I'm sorry, hang your head in shame whether you've done something wrong or not, and do what the teacher tells you. The new rhetoric is that conditions are created on both sides. You're under no pressure. You're not persuaded, you're not told to do things. You are given the opportunity to develop an environment that is mutually beneficial for both the interactants. My goal as a teacher is not to change your behavior. It is to facilitate the evolution of your behavior. It is to give you new ideas so that you can develop as an individual with your unique set of knowledge and go into the environment and deal with your unique environment yourself. I cannot map the entire gamut of situations that you'll come across, and that is precisely what I'm trying to do through this course. Okay, that is the new rhetoric. Okay, dramatistic pentad was given by Burke in 1969. This explains how we identify or fail to identify with each other in social situations. We have acts, which is what happened, or behaviors, what is accomplished, what happened. The agent here is the person performing dramatically, who initiated the action. Scene, the situation in which the action occurs, where and when did this happen. Okay. Agency is the means used by the agent to accomplish communicative goals. How did whatever happened happen? Purpose is the motivating reason behind the rhetoric. Why did it develop as it did? How did the communication happen? What was said? Who said it? Where and when was it said? How was it said? Was the person nice to you? Was the person angry with you? And why was it said? Why did it take the shape that it did? So, what, who, where, when, why and how? We are back to square one. We are back to whatever we've learned since class 1, since we were born. Difficult things, but they all relate back to common sense behaviors. Okay, so that is the dramatistic pentad. And based on these things, we identify or fail to identify with each other in the social situation that we find ourselves in, and that in turn determines how our relationship progresses. Okay. The second part here is impression management, again put forth by Irving Goffman in 1959. Thank you, Dr. Roy Wood, for teaching us this. Dr. Wood and Dr. Kathleen Haspel were the ones who taught us these things. They taught me anyway. Okay, impression management deals with the analysis of the manner in which we accomplish interpersonal goal attainment through how we present ourselves dramatically to others. Now we are talking about drama, we are talking about portraying ourselves, and it analyzes the manner in which we get things done by presenting ourselves, by using our public face in certain ways. People engage in role enactment, which is a mix of pretense and spontaneity based on the expectation of self and others. I pretend there's some spontaneity in my behavior, and face work, maintenance of an appropriate image or impression. I am doing things to maintain an appropriate face, and in order to maintain an appropriate face, I am mixing, there's some amount of pretense and some spontaneity. Again, nothing is right or wrong, nothing is ethical or unethical. What I am trying to do here is maintaining this public image to get things done based on the expectations I have from myself and from the people I am interacting with. Personal front is the strategic ways to encourage our desired impressions. So, this is how we encourage the Personal front is what I put in front of people. This is my desired impression of myself. This is what I want people to believe about me. Okay, and I do this in strategic manners. Expressions given and expressions given off are different here. Expressions given are intended and expressions given off are the unintended expressions that we have, and this in turn determines how we manage our impressions. Now we have footing, which is another concept in impression management. When two communicators seem to interact on the basis of different statuses, assumptions about who has power, they are said to be on different footing. Nothing to be explained here. Regions, we have a public face and we have a private face, front region and back region, and the private face is less guarded behavior. Teamwork is people often depend on team cooperation on each other to present a coherent social performance, again given by Goffman. And frame, which is the definition or interpretation of what a situation means. Framing is the act of asserting such a definition. Framing is all about the point of view that we are coming from. Okay, now symbolic convergence theory, I'll quickly breeze through it. I've been told that I have only maybe 3 minutes left, so I'll just go through it very quickly. Symbolic convergence theory focuses on the communicative processes by which human beings converge their individual fantasies, dreams and meanings into shared symbol systems. And this means that we get together and we create meaning together as a group, and then we fantasize and we come up with a different meaning from a situation. People dramatize their interpretations of individual meanings in terms of group symbols. Okay. Some aspects of the dramatization of group symbols. Dramatizing the message. How is drama built, constructed and shared among audiences after communicators initiate involving and persuasive messages? So, how do we get in touch with each other? How we dramatize the message? The second stage here is the fantasy theme. The topics that we come up with for the public face are constructed together as explanations for the communication. People in a group with a fantasy theme again often interact with others to extract common sub-story meanings from those larger narratives. So, what we get together and we figure out what we want to believe in a typical situation. Chaining is extending that fantasy, taking it forward, adding some masala, not really masala, but believing, filling in the gaps and completing the picture. Script is the content that comes to be accepted and not debated. So, we talk about things, we talk about events, we talk about a relationship, we fill in the gaps and we come up with a story that both of us believe to be true. And the rhetorical vision is the unified symbolic system which portrays a broad and consistent view of much or a portion of their social and material reality. We come up with a story, we share the story, we talk about the manner in which the group has dealt with situations, and we come up with a unified story that is acceptable to everybody in the environment. Okay. Some questions for discussion. I know I have probably breezed through this too fast, but then again I would like you to read things and I'll give you a list of references. Before we do that, I would like you to discuss the relevance of the theories that have been discussed here for intra and inter-organizational communication. The second thing I'd like you to do is discuss the implications of the dialogic theories and the dramaturgical theory in the fulfillment of organizational goals, especially in the case of a profit-making organization. How will these things apply? Why should I be teaching all these things to budding managers? Think about this and we will discuss some more interesting things in the next lecture. Thank you.